Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. All right. Happy Monday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Lucy. Lucy's full name is Lucienne. Tell me how to pronounce it, Lucy. I'm bad at this.
Lucienne Canet.
Lucienne Canet.
Maybe I should write it in the chat because it's a little complicated.
Yeah. So Lucy is here tonight. Lucy came up with what I think is a really good idea. She is in AOC's district, and there originally was a libertarian candidate, I believe, that was challenging AOC. I'm not familiar with the entire story about what happened with the details with him, but I do know that he's not on the ballot per se. And that was Jonathan, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Lucy came up with a good idea. So Lucy, take it away.
So my idea is to submit more write-in candidates. And that's why I'm running as a write-in candidate for AOC's district. My goal is not to win. I don't think it's very likely that I'll win, but I think that it's a district where losing is winning in the sense that it'll really get the word out about write-in candidates. And the reason I'm doing it is because we have a problem right now with this like third-party split, like this Jonathan Howie guy. He wanted to run as a libertarian in AOC's district. He went on everybody's channel. And this is a highly democratic district where economic libertarianism is not popular. This is an area where we need more public housing. We have one of the highest homelessness rates. We need Medicare for all. So I always thought it was highly unlikely that any of his platform would actually make it. But he was trying to run as a third party. And I do think that there's some validity to that. And then you have your Greens and your socialists, your socialist alternative, and maybe your conservative party as well. So basically the independent vote is split 5 ways. And then you also have this LaRoucheite party that Diane Sayre is running on. That's like another small party. So the independent vote is split like 6 ways. And that's what allows the duopoly to control us. So my idea is to run as a write-in candidate this time, just throw it against the wall, see what happens, and to inspire other people to run as a write-in candidate in their own districts. Now, my district is like over 700,000 people. So it's highly unlikely that it'll work. But believe it or not, AOC won. She had 110,000 votes out of those 700,000 people. So the amount of actual voters, not the amount of actual people in our area, but the amount of actual voters is actually fairly small. And that's what people don't really understand about this area. It's like an area with a lot of people, but a lot of them are disenfranchised. So it's not really the way people think. AOC is not really as popular as people think. It's just that people kind of think that she's better than the other options. So that's where we are. And third parties, they just actually increased the number of signatures that you need to qualify as a third party. Before you needed 15,000 votes. And now you need 45,000 votes, which means that in a district that's super disenfranchised, where AOC won because she had 110,000 votes, you basically need half the amount of votes you need just to get on the ballot. So it's extremely difficult for third parties. And that's why I think people should just kind of like start using these independent media apparatus and get the name out on Twitter, wherever, about running as write-ins.
That's right. This is the same problem that Larry, oh gosh, I don't want to get his name wrong. Sumners? Larry Sharp. Sorry, think about the wrong Larry. This is the same problem that Larry Sharp had running in New York as well. So he came on, he was another libertarian candidate, and he actually got all the signatures that he needed. Then they changed the rule. And then obviously he's like, whoa, like now we got to go get all these other signatures because you changed the rule like last minute. And he had a lawsuit, went to court, lost the lawsuit. So now he's another one that's not going to be on the ballot. So this is a common thing that's been happening. Now, Lucy, you have 5 issues that you sent me. The first one is Green New Deal for public housing. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so AOC ran basically in the district on this idea of the Green New Deal for public housing. And it is a deal that kind of got watered down from the Green Party's Green New Deal. The problem, especially in our area, is that the money that they're claiming they're using to green the buildings, well, what happens when you green public housing, or when you make any kind of improvement to public housing, is that public housing becomes more attractive to privatization. So
that's right.
What the Green New Deal for public housing is actually going to do eventually is to get people evicted. And public housing residents do not have to bear the burden for, they already have a very small carbon footprint. Many of them do not drive or do not have cars. So what I'm getting the word out is that the Green New Deal for public housing is not any kind of economic justice, because poor people do not have to bear the burden for greening the environment. And we need housing now, and it does not have to be green housing. There's other things that you can do in terms of helping the environment. And the number one thing would be to cut the military budget, not the Green New Deal for public housing. So I am running fully against the Green New Deal for public housing.
Right. This is a good point to bring up, because we've had the same problem here in Boston as well. Once they put in those green initiatives for public housing, Lucy is correct. It will actually become privatized housing, and the tenants who are there will be pushed out. Sometimes they'll actually let the buildings start to fall apart and not make any repairs on those buildings because they really want to push them out. So the tenants are moved out, and then they turn it into this Green New Deal housing that a lot of working class people can't afford to move into anyway. Another issue that you brought up is identity politics in the boroughs of NYC. Let's get into that.
All right, so this is a big one. So identity politics in the boroughs of New York City. This is the Bronx and Queens is basically one of the most diverse boroughs in the world. Queens has more nationalities than any part of the country, straight up. And the Bronx also has a lot of nationalities, a lot of races. We have nearly every kind of political view here. We have every race, every religion. And the problem here, and people might not realize this because they think of identity politics as Democrat versus Republicans, but the issue with AOC is that we also have majority minorities. And Puerto Ricans are a majority minority, right? Because AOC is Puerto Rican, we have a lot of Puerto Ricans here. We also have nearly every other nationality on earth. We have a huge South Asian population. We have white people. We have Black people. We have African Americans. We have African immigrants. We have Albanians and Italians and Greeks and Russians and people from East Asia. Like, there is literally not a part of the world where there aren't immigrants in the Bronx and Queens. And the problem with somebody like AOC is they'll hyper focus on whatever the majority minority is and throw nearly every other nationality and race under the bus. And we saw how she did this when she voted for the Iron Dome. She threw the Palestinian community under the bus. There's a huge Arab community right on Steinway Street. We saw it when she voted present in terms of funding the Capitol Police, how she threw the African American community under the bus. And she doesn't really care because the African American community is under 30% of her district. So she knows that she can win without them. So this is the problem with AOC. She is capitalizing basically on her majority minority status in New York 14 in order to focus only on issues that pertain to Puerto Rico. And she's not even really that good on Puerto Rico, because what she has done with Puerto Rico is almost complete word salad. Basically, what she did is she said that she was going to support a non-binding vote in terms of Puerto Ricans voting for statehood. And basically, she said that she didn't think that that you could determine the future of millions of Puerto Ricans based on a referendum. And it's like, well, if you can't determine the future of millions of people based on a referendum vote, what do you prefer? Do you prefer them not to be able to vote at all, which is exactly what Puerto Ricans are under in terms of colonialism? They haven't been able to vote on their future at all. And AOC is saying basically that she supports a non-binding vote instead of a national referendum on statehood. So AOC, she's holding Puerto Ricans back. She's throwing all other kinds of minorities under the bus. She's throwing Medicare for all under the bus. And basically, if you're not standing against U.S. imperialism completely, you are basically throwing under the bus nearly every immigrant nationality in New York 14, and it doesn't work. And, I think AOC would be surprised if all of the other immigrants that are not Puerto Ricans and the Puerto Ricans also that know what she's up to actually voted against her. How many of us there are that are against her majority minority identity politics?
Yeah, and I think this is a really important point that you brought up here, because we're going to get into this. I'm getting into this later on tonight in reference to Bernie Sanders, because he also has a tendency to throw certain minority group under the bus. And I'm going to do a whole breakdown tonight about that. So there are certain things I think people need to pay attention to. But what's also important too, in reference to AOC, is that she, if you look at like the percentages, she is one of the least effective members in Congress. But like you said, if she caters to a certain base, which is her minority group, this is how someone like AOC can continue to win. So she would need somebody to challenge her, I would say, that's going to cater to like everybody and not just focus on, exactly. That's the big difference here. But like Lucy said, if she keeps doing what she's doing and she doesn't have that type of challenger, she'll continue to get in.
Absolutely. And, I think part of the power of the fraud squad is that, if we're realistic, before 2018, there really were very few young women of color in Congress. And I think people aren't stupid. They do vote for their interests, even if those are marginal interests. And we need to respect that. And I respect the fact that people voted for her then. And I would have voted for her then too, to be very honest. So, it's very complicated. But at the end of the day, she acts like she's completely ignorant about foreign policy. Like right now, there's presidents all over the world that are getting ousted. Imran Khan just got ousted. There's a huge Pakistani community in Queens. She hasn't said a word about that. She hasn't said a word about Haiti. There's a huge Haitian American population. There's a whole Haitian American neighborhood. She hasn't said anything about how Cristina Kirchner, the president of Argentina, almost got shot last month. There's an Argentinian community in Queens. She hasn't said anything about Colombia. She hasn't said anything about Bangladesh or Yemen. There's a huge Yemeni population. So this is especially since Joe Biden, she said that she would support the resolution to stop the war in Yemen with Bernie Sanders. And what happened with that? They've totally given up on that since Joe Biden got into office. So this doesn't work anymore. It really has to be something where there's kind of a united front where no minority gets left out, because we have a lot of them here. And I really do think that if somebody runs completely independent in this area, they could win, because there's a lot of minority nationalities whose issues have been completely left out. And we saw that a lot with Bernie Sanders and the Muslim community, for example. People who never come out to vote at all, and they went out to vote for him because he mentioned one or two things. So I definitely think that it could work. And if it doesn't work, then it'll inspire somebody else, like, maybe somebody that watches the show and lives in a small town where it's easier to win by write-in. Maybe you guys can do it. And it'll be much easier in some places than actually getting on the ballot, because it's almost like we're using their system to try to get in. Why don't we just use the existing systems, like their canvassing software or whatever else that the Democrats already have, to push our candidates to canvass for our independent candidates? And we don't have to raise money. We don't have to create a fundraising machine. We can just do like what you guys are doing, mutual aid, do write-in candidates, and then just, throw something at the wall and see what sticks. That's how I see it.
That's right. That's a good point to bring up too. I used to live in New York, so everything that Lucy is saying it's spot on. Like, it's Queens, especially Queens in the Bronx is probably one of the most diverse. Like, you can't just go there and just be like, the majority of people that live here are white or are, black, or it's not like that. And so it's important that you really represent your district and not just a certain group. Now, one of the other issues that you mentioned is how AOC turned her back on everything she ran on, including foreign policy, racial justice, and immigration. Let's hear a little bit about that.
Okay, well, the racial justice, I already talked about how she threw African Americans under the bus by voting present on the police funding. The Medicare for All, she has not vouched for Medicare for All. And we saw during the whole Force the Vote fiasco that it's basically only something she did to run for office. She wasn't really actually willing to push for it. And then the immigration, that's another thing that's very, very interesting. And it's our American citizens. And once they touch U.S. soil, they can vote here. So she knows she has a majority, like more voters in the Puerto Rican population. She took Abolish ICE off her website, right? She knows that there's Mexicans, for example, in our area that have been here for over 20 years since NAFTA, and they still don't have citizenship. And they don't need a path to citizenship because that'll take another 20 years. They need amnesty now. Now, her campaign, they put forward this Abolish ICE idea because basically the most brutal form of immigration control right now is the deportations. But what the source of the actual problem is not just the deportations, it's that people have no legal status. And the last time there was a real amnesty law that took care of that problem so that people that have already been here for 20 years have a real path to legal status, you would not believe it. It wasn't a Democrat. It was Ronald Reagan in 1981 who passed the immigration amnesty law that my mother benefited from. It was Ronald Reagan. It was a Republican, and it was not a Democrat. So basically what that means is like the Overton window has passed so far to the right that Democrats are far to the right on immigration of where Ronald Reagan was in 1981. And what Obama did with the whole Dreamer situation is he made it seem like he was giving these Dreamers this huge gift by allowing them to remain in the country. He didn't make their amnesty permanent, and now they're still fighting for citizenship, people that came here as little kids without it being their fault. And they still don't have any path to citizenship. They've been here for 20 years, for 30 years. And I don't actually think this is as much of a partisan issue. I'm sorry, I'm like getting heated. I don't think this is as much of a partisan issue as people think, because I've seen, for example, Trump voters, like they'll vote for something in theory because they just like Trump, whatever, they like his vibe. But when they realize that their neighbor, Jose, that has had a restaurant next door for 20 years, gets deported, I've seen those people pull together to help that person. I've seen conservatives do that. I've seen Trump voters do that. So I think we really need to make clear to people that we have a systemic immigration issue in this country where it's not just about, drugs, trafficking, and people coming over the border right now. It's about our neighbors. It's about people that have been here for 20 to 30 years that still have no path to citizenship. And it's also about our economy, because the fact that they don't have citizenship, for example, it means that they can't invest in housing. So the housing market gets blocked up. Boomers can't retire because immigrants aren't buying housing because they're sending all their money home. So this is like a complete, it's a huge economic issue that really is a big deal in our area. It's a big deal everywhere in our country, but it's very, very much a big deal in our area because New York City, it's a port city and it's a sanctuary city. So
that's right. That's right. We have the same issues here, not to the extent of NYC, because there aren't as many people here as there are in NYC, but similar thing. I had a classmate when I was in undergrad, and she told me it took her 10 years just to get the papers.
And she was lucky to get it in 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, this is ridiculous. It should never take that long. For people who are not aware, George Bush Sr. also had more of a, I guess you would say, a more democratic approach in reference to immigration, like very different from what you're hearing from the Democrat politicians that we have in place today. So this is important for people to understand. Like, when I rant about Kamala Harris is supposed to be responsible for the immigration reform in this country, that was her task. When I ran about that, it's because this has been a problem for years. And regardless, it seems like whether it was Trump, whether it was, Obama, whether it's, Biden now, this issue has still not been resolved. And it's really frustrating. And for people who come here who are undocumented, like, you really need to understand, like, it's not like just because someone is undocumented, that doesn't necessarily mean that they came here illegally. And people need to understand that it takes a long time to get the papers to even file to become a citizen. Then you eventually get to the point where there's a test. Yes, there's a test that you have to take. Then if you pass the test, then you become a citizen. And some people, depending on what country you are coming here from, your citizenship path is faster than others. And I don't think that that's fair either.
Exactly. And the other thing that's that Americans I feel like we would have agreement with it about this if we talked about it honestly. It's not just illegal immigration that takes our jobs. It's legal immigration. For example, we have all of these Americans. We're all racking up student debt. But what are American engineering companies, American health institutions, what are they doing? They're saying, in the Philippines, for example, is training nurses for free. Those people don't have any student debt, and they're going to work for cheaper wages. We can import nurses from the Philippines. We can import engineers from India. Those people are legal immigrants, and those people also take our jobs. I'm not saying it like they can't come here and they can't have jobs. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the dividing line right now between illegal immigrants and illegal immigrants is very thin. Like, it's not like the government is correctly deciding what is right and wrong. The people that come here from Mexico and Central America to pick fruit are also very, very, probably even more vital to our economy. Because some, but not all Americans want to do those jobs. Some of the wages aren't convenient for them. And like, we also don't have enough farm labor in this country. So, like, we have a very retail-oriented economy. So, it's very complicated, and there has to be a path to citizenship for things like farm labor and all of that shit. So, we've really, and George Bush also had a more progressive policy about this with the Braceros program, and he was a Republican. So we have to talk about this honestly and not say, oh, it's because, Republicans are fascist and Democrats are, I'm over all of this. We have to talk about it honestly. And the problem with AOC is that she's really 100% on the Democratic partisan bandwagon, where she can't talk to third parties rationally, where she can't talk to conservatives rationally. Believe it or not, this is an area that right now that's over 50% Latino, and a lot of Latinos are social conservatives. They're anti-abortion, for example. Those people vote Democrat, but it's not like they don't have any conservative views. So when AOC runs in this area as, women's right to choose, we will always have an LGBTQ ally in the New York 14. All of that is great, but you have to think about the things that are most important to the people of New York 14. Things like standing against police violence, basic economic things, Medicare for all, housing the homeless, more affordable housing. That's the number one important thing. And it doesn't have to be green affordable housing. We just have to fucking get it done now. And then, just like the basic standing against foreign, imperialism and all of these military interventions, which is what actually causes the most like environmental devastation. So I'm just like completely over her little stunts, her little dances. This is a district that's over 50% Latino. All of us know how to dance here. Like, this is not something that makes her particularly appealing to me. Maybe the liberals in the suburbs like really like this about her, but I am not interested in seeing these Jenny from the block stunts anymore. It's embarrassing. Like, when I say I'm really, really over it. And I do feel like independent media, and I credit your show for this, and I love a lot of these other shows, but I feel like they should take a little bit more of a lead in terms of encouraging people. I feel like they're scared of getting something wrong. So if they don't accurately assess a candidate and they're wrong about the candidate, then they're worried about having promoted them. And I understand that after the deception of Bernie Sanders, the fraud squad, etc. But if you're talking about getting a third party in, and I was just watching John Stasevich on Hardlands Media saying this very thing. If you actually want to get some kind of third party in, you have to start supporting people, like anybody, like see what sticks. You know what I mean? And so that's why I'm running as a write-in. And I also recommend that if you're in Richie Torres' district, which is New York 14, you write in Jose Vega.
That's
W.
right.
Vega.
Yeah. He's another one that's a fraud. He was another one that ran as he's a progressive, and then you come to find out he's further to the right than most. He's another one that's a fraud. But they pumped him up just solely on identity politics.
Well, what happened there? They pumped him up on identity politics, but what happened there that was also interesting is that he was like the progressive Democrat. He was never progressive, not even as progressive as AOC. But he was running against kind of a social conservative Democrat, but social conservative in the Latino tradition of, anti-abortion. He was like evangelical. And Richie Torres was running as kind of, I guess you would say, your woke, I don't know if I should use that word, Democrat. He's black and gay, but he's like a Zionist. He's not really progressive. But what happened there was that actually 11 candidates, activists, real activists in my area, were running against Richie Torres. And it's like, what is going on here? It was a clown parade. They were all excellent people. There was like a former young lord, Black Lives Matters, leaders, all kinds of people all running at the same time. Everybody had so much ego that when somebody stepped up that seemed better than them, nobody wanted to step down. So what ended up happening is more identity politics. You had like the Black Lives Matter activists, the young lord. You had, like a Muslim candidate, getting their friends to vote for them. This is not going to work. You have to have one person that stands for all of the issues. It's a very complicated area. And that's it. And then if somebody sees a candidate that's better than them, they have to step down. Because otherwise this is like too many cooks in the kitchen, and that's what happened with Richie Torres. That's how he won, because the independent vote was split like 11 ways.
Yeah. So that's another thing too. You can't have too many third party candidates and too many independent candidates running at the same time, because it's true that does happen. So it would be nice if those candidates could get together and say, okay, only one of us really needs to move forward out of the independents. Third party, only one of you really needs to move forward, because otherwise you're going to split the vote like 10 different ways. And that's important to note too. And I think that also happened in California during Gavin Newsom's recall. They had third party candidates running. They had independent candidates running. I think Kim Iverson said at one point it was like over 20 something people run. So then it just gets split to all these different ways, when reality, they all know all of them are not the best option. Right. So that's when you got to kind of like suck up your ego a little bit and your pride and just say, OK, I'm probably not the best option out of all of these individuals running.
So like the way I saw it is I actually asked around to see, I was like, is anybody else running? And then I realized nobody's doing it. And I was like, I'll just do it because I have access to independent media. You know, like I went to the heckling event with Joe Biden. I was like heckler number 3. So I've already been doing stuff like organizing Camp Dada, whatever. I was like, I'll just do it because there's no other options. If there's a better option, then you have that. Well, it's too late because there's 1 day left. But like right now, there's nobody. There really is nobody. So in the next election, you know, maybe there'll be a few candidates, and then hopefully everybody will step down when a better candidate comes along, because it just doesn't work this way. That's right. Like it only really works if there's like a vacuum like there is now. Right now there's a little bit of a vacuum because there's just AOC and there's Desi Kuhler, who's the conservative candidate, and Tina Forte. So actually the conservative / Republican vote, which is not the same thing exactly, but it's split in an area where they're not even going to win at all. Like they have a very low chance, even if they were united. So that's why it's very risk-free to write me in. And that's why in the next election, someone should, and if she's still there, someone should also run with the caveat that when someone better comes along, everybody else better step down. Because this is not like this is not working. We can't have like a clown parade of 10 candidates. It's not going to work.
That's right. So another issue that you brought up is the third party stalemate. You want to get into that?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's basically it. The third party stalemate, like in an area where you have, people always say things like, they want activists to run as if they want people to have some kind of activist resume. But then they also say something like, we want regular people to run. And it's like, well, regular people don't have activist resumes. You know, regular people are struggling to get food on the table. Maybe they've participated in a tenant association or something. I did the same thing. But I didn't lead the tenant association. So regular people, they always want regular people to run, but then they have an activist resume. And then it's very hard for regular people to get even independent media. Yep. Very
true.
It's very difficult because they don't have a platform. So that's independent media. Forget about MSM. There's no way you're getting on like Fox or a CNN or anything like that. So the options are really limited here. When I talk to people they just think it's crazy to be involved at all in politics, and it probably is. So I think it's just, we just have to start doing write-ins and, seeing what happens. And if you are in the state of New York, I am voting for that Diane Sar lady, who's running against Chuck Schumer. I know she's not perfect. And I am not, by the way, when I joined the anti-war protesters at the Joe Biden rally yesterday, and I called them out for Joe Biden out for ousting Imran Khan, for invading Haiti, for not having any plan for public housing, and for the student debt bankruptcy law, because this guy is literally making our generation go bankrupt. And AOC is playing nice. And she's showing off her engagement ring and her nails because she thinks that's what connects her.
Because she's not going bankrupt.
Because she's not going bankrupt. So, I'm happy she's happy, but like showing me a picture of her cute dog is not going to get me to vote for her. I don't know, like something got into my head. I just got really mad and I was like, write in, just like write me in. And I don't think it'll work here, but I think people should do it to see how many votes we get. And then if you live in a small town, definitely I think it's a much easier thing to do to run as a write-in. And then you don't have to run as green or socialist, or whatever. Like you are running as yourself because your neighbors know you, because people know you, and they know who you are, and they know you're not like a partisan hack. And that's it. That's all we need. We don't have to like assign that many labels to it.
And I want to remind everyone, the gentleman that ran against India Walton, Byron Brown, was a write-in candidate, and he beat her. Okay.
Yes.
And she had AOC's endorsement, and she had Chuck Schumer's endorsement, and the write-in candidate beat her.
Yes.
So this is why, like, especially like Lucy's right. If you're in like a smaller town or like a really like smaller district, for example, Newburyport here in Massachusetts has an open seat. There's nobody there. So it's just like if you have those kind of options and you think you can kind of just slide in, go for it. Try something different, because it's just, she's right. If you go in as a write-in candidate, then you don't have to deal with this whole, oh, my name's not on the ballot and all that kind of stuff. And then going on to like independent media and getting them to promote you and things like that. I mean, I will say I've vented about this for almost 2 years, that people do not bring, most of them are not bringing these third-party and independent candidates on their show on independent media because they don't believe in that process. They still want to do things for the Democratic Party. That's why they're not getting a platform. I think the only exception has been Jill Stein. And even with Jill Stein, there were very few who brought her on. And Matthew Ho recently. And Matthew Ho was mainly brought on a lot of people's shows after he was removed from the ballot, and that made the news. So I think don't wait until a candidate is removed from the ballot to bring them on your show. Bring them on when they first announce that they're running, because this is, it's just, I look at Diane Sayre, right? Like, why hasn't she been on everyone's show?
Yes.
And look, she came on and like I told her, I did not agree with her on some of the issues, but why hasn't she been on everyone's show? At this point, it should have happened, right? So I think that's incredibly important, that we need to get, you guys need to have more of a platform, more of a voice.
Yeah, and regarding the LaRouche anti-war protesters, like I am not part of the LaRouche party, and I joined them, and it was great. We heckled Joe Biden. Everybody's always complaining, and they're like, somebody should face them. But when I went there, it was like a crowd of loyal Democratic voters. They were booing at me and jeering at me, and I got kicked out by security. So, these are like the love, not hate voters of Westchester County. So, I like, it was crazy. But if you want to join as a write-in, I think it's very possible, especially in small municipalities. And also, if you want to join the anti-war protesters, get in touch with Jose Vega on Twitter. Get in touch with the LaRouche people. You don't have to become a LaRouche person. You don't have to agree with them on whatever they believe in. It just makes it easier to go with a group of people to heckle a politician if you want to go do it. So
that's right. All right, guys. Again, we're asking you to, if you're in that district and you can do so, to write in Lucy N. Cannett for AOC's district. And I think this is what more people are going to have to do. Listen, there was a candidate called D's Nuts that actually got a significant amount of votes. You guys,
and also Paperboy Prince. And actually, I thought it was a joke. I actually voted for Paperboy Prince, and I like beforehand because like everybody else seemed like they sucked. And then I saw his video. He's great. Paperboy Prince is great. So I think we should just do it.
Awesome. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for coming on, and good luck. And I'll spread the word to people.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh boy. Yes, yes, I do remember D's nuts. I'll never forget that. Never forget that. Yeah, if you're in Lucy's district, guys, you're voting tomorrow and you're tired of AOC, write in Lucy, write in her name. I think this is a good idea. She reached out to me the other day and I was like, holy crap, Lucy, I didn't know. So I was like, absolutely. Come on, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. All right. We have an interesting show tonight. I want to go ahead and shout out everyone who's a Sabby patron really quick. Give a shout out to the Patties. All right. Oh, why is my screen glitching? That is weird. Let me stop share. That was really strange. Let me try it again. Glad I don't have to do share screen for other things. We'll try it again. Okay. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Guys, thank you for your support. If you want to be a patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. Thank you guys so much for your support. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen. I'm laughing because I'm seeing all the comments about D's nuts in the in the chat. I also want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. We call them newbies. Let's give it up for Alex and Juan Barreto. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. All right. Let's get into it, guys. What are we going to discuss tonight? So, interesting topics. And I promise you, we're going somewhere. You know, tomorrow is election day. So we have a couple of things we're going to touch on tonight. Tonight, we are going to discuss TYT is hosting Matt Gaetz. What is happening? I'm not kidding. Yes, this is actually a real thing. We're going to get into that story. I got a lot to say about that. I'm also going to get into Bernie Sanders' playbook. So I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight. We're going to do a little bit of a case study here because I noticed something yesterday when I saw Bernie streaming at the Philadelphia rally. So we're going to do a little case study about Bernie Sanders' playbook, and that's actually going to be the call-in topic for tonight. Lucy was just here to talk about AOC's challenge, and we're also going to discuss Marty Walsh pushes workers. And that is not a good situation. And that is related to the poll question that you see in the live chat. I think we have a couple of comments here. I want to give shout outs to you guys. Thank you for the super chat. Roger, done. I wrote in Sabby for governor. Oh, no. Don't write me in. Don't write at me. Don't mean me. Thank you for the super chat. A long story short. Sabby, thanks for having Lucy on. She knows her stuff. Yes, she does. Lucy was at Camp Dotto with me, you guys. Fun time. And thank you for this chat as well, Roger. AOC threw us under the bus for not being for reparations. Oh, Roger, you're getting a step ahead of me here. You're getting a step ahead of me. Thank you for this super chat. Also, AOC followed the J-Lo style, pretending to be from South Bronx. I'm still Janie from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. The Bronx, the Bronx. JB, my comrades in the house. I didn't have Sabby saying D's nuts on my bingo card, yet here we go. Yeah, I'll never forget that, man. D's nuts was something else. Okay, let's go ahead and get into our first story tonight. So Marty Walsh is doing something that I think all of us should be paying close attention to here. Marty Walsh, he was my former mayor here in Boston right before we got Michelle Wu. He actually left that position early to work for Joe Biden as the labor secretary. That's how he left. Michelle Wu came in. Actually, we had an interim mayor there for a second, and then Michelle Wu was elected, right? What Marty Walsh was known for when he was mayor here in Boston is that he was really big on unions. So he was known as like this pro-union tough guy. He was also pro-police, which Sabby didn't like. But he was also, you know, he was good on some issues, bad on others, right? So Marty Walsh also recognized, and I will give him credit for this, he recognized that there are a lot of young people that live in the Boston area. And some of the rules that were implemented under Mayor Menino, it was kind of starting to make Boston like this sleepy town, right? So Marty Walsh realized that you really need to amp up the nightlife and create more events so that young people have something to do in the city. And instead of graduating from these colleges here and moving to cities like New York or Philly or DC or LA that has this robust adult nightlife, why not just create that here? So he did implement a lot of things that I will say entertainment wise, I think were better for a lot of younger people in this city. He also was the one that pushed the T, which is our subway system here, to stay open later. He said, go out and vote with your feet. And we did. But unfortunately, due to budget cuts, that didn't last either. So for those who are not aware, our public transportation system is not 24 hours like a New York per se. And a lot of people in Boston don't own a car. But he did try. But right now, Marty Walsh is trying to do something that is really going to make me frown. I spoke to you a couple of days ago about the rail workers trying to decide if they wanted to go on strike. Now, you saw how quickly Joe Biden was able to respond to them, because if they are to go on strike, that will affect the supply chain, which will affect food traveling across this country, products being delivered across this country. So it is crucial that we do have them. As of today, they have still not reached a decision within their union. And that also means that they also have not decided whether or not they will go on strike. So now Marty Walsh is trying to intervene. Let's see what he wants to do. Here we go. Labor Secretary says Congress needs to block rail strikes without new deals. Now, hold on to your seats for this one, ladies and gentlemen. So I read this over the weekend. I'm going to make it a little bit larger for you. Yeah. Now you can take off your glasses. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh says he hopes negotiators between railroads and some rail unions can reach new labor deals and avert a possible strike. But he said without a deal, he expects Congress will step in and impose contracts on the unhappy rank and file union members. The statement is a blow to the union's leverage as they seek to win a contract that their membership will accept. Now, I want to ask you a question. Would you want to sign a contract that's implemented by our Congress? Would you trust our Congress to create a contract for your employment and you don't even work for Congress? Let's go on. 2 rail unions reached tentative labor deals with the railroads in September ahead of the strike deadline, only to have their membership vote against ratifying them. Now, this is coming from Marty Walsh. My goal is to get those unions back at the table with companies and get this thing done. He said a negotiated agreement would be the best thing we can do is to avoid any type of rail strike or slowdown. And see, this is actually what they're the most afraid of. I told you guys that this could be our segue into a general strike. If the railroad workers go on strike, they're probably going to put more pressure on to who, right? The truckers. Then if the truckers say, F that, I'm not doing extra work, they go on strike. This could be our way into a general strike. When you shut down the supply chain. That is the most effective way to do it. Because they have not reached an agreement, now Marty Walsh is trying to intervene and push them to reach an agreement. And if they don't, he is threatening to have Congress create a contract for them. I think this is a dangerous situation. I don't think the federal government should go to such lengths. And my advice to the rail workers, if any of them happen to see this segment, is to just go ahead and go on the damn strike. Go ahead and go on the damn strike. Go ahead and do it. Do it. Call their bluff. because no one should sit here and intimidate you like this. So they went from being intimidated by their employer to now being intimidated by the labor secretary to possibly being intimidated by Congress. This has gone too far. So I would not be for this. I sincerely hope they are not for this. And I really would encourage them. And if any of you know any of them, I would encourage them and tell you to encourage them to go ahead and go on strike. Shut it down. Now, it goes on to say Walsh was involved in a 20-hour bargaining session that reached tentative labor deals just hours before a September 16 strike deadline. He said failing new negotiated agreements, Congress would have to impose a contract on the unions as a way to keep union members on the job. Let me highlight this. As a way to keep union members on the job. This is how they keep you as a slave to the system. This is how they keep you where you are. You see how they can just come in and just say, well, we're going to come up with a contract for you since you guys can't make an agreement. That way we keep you on your job. Do you see how this works? They can quit. Those of you who are working for the railroad company, you can quit. Don't ever let them make you think you have to stand there and you have to tolerate this. And I can tell you from experience, from talking to other people that have unionized and talking to people that have just walked off during their jobs in the middle of the day, I've seen both sides of this. There's always that intimidation. They'll either intimidate you or they'll say, oh, well, we'll just replace you with someone else. Well, why don't you go ahead and call their bluff? Go ahead and go on strike and let them try to replace you with someone else. And let's see how long those replacements last, because they're probably going to have the same complaints that these employees have. Call their bluff. Let's see how it goes. You have to stop allowing these oligarchs and our government making you a slave to the system. Now, it goes on to say, if for some reason one of the unions doesn't get to an agreement with the companies, then Congress will have to take action and avert a strike in our country. You see, this is why I'm telling you a general strike is more effective than actually trying to elect a progressive politician. Do you see how they want to react? Congress will have to take action to avert a strike because Congress does not want the supply chain to shut down. If you are a railroad worker, if you're a trucker, you have more power and more leverage than you may realize. You have the power. If you are in charge of the supply chain in this country, you can really decide what comes in and what goes out of this country. Remember that. Why beg with these politicians? Why beg with them? Why try to plead? You have the power in your hands. And I'm sure that, look, walk off. I'm pretty sure, they don't want to lose some of the benefits that they do have, and they don't want to lose their pay. But with all this time where they're still trying to decide, oh, are we going to make an agreement? Bump that, bro. Go get another job. You could probably get another job right now that's going to pay you more money. Leave them. Go. Just go in and say, bye-bye. But I'm sorry, it's been a while. It's been a while and there's been no agreement made. One of those two unions, track maintenance workers who belong to the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division, is set to go on strike as soon as November 19th. Let's go ahead and mark that date there. Without a new deal, while the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen, could walk out as soon as December 4th. The BMWED members voted 57% against the proposed deal, while members of the Signalmen Union voted 60% against the deals. If any rail unions were to go on strike, all the rail unions, which together represent about 110,000 members, would honor their picket lines and refuse to work, bringing the nation's freight railroads to a grinding halt. That would be a body blow to the U.S. economy, snarling, still struggling supply chains and triggering widespread bottlenecks and shortages. And I'm going to say what they won't say right here. The country would be fucked. This is your general strike. And the federal government would respond quickly. You know why? Because if you don't have the supply chain, you don't have goods coming in. That's something that will actually affect them too, by the way. Not just working class people and poor people. That if you don't have the food coming in, that affects everybody. That's why I said just go ahead and do the strike and then tell them to come back to the table. When Joe Biden comes back to the table, tell him these are our demands. Might as well throw in some other things in there too while you're at it. Might as well go ahead and say, you know what? Also, by the way, we don't just want these benefits for ourselves. We don't just want better health insurance for ourselves. By the way, we think you need to give this to everybody in the United States. Then we'll talk. That's your general strike. That's your body blow for the win. About 30% of U.S. freight, when measured by weight and distance traveled, moves by rail. Prices of goods from gasoline to food to cars could soar if trains halt. In addition, factories could be forced to shut down temporarily due to part shortages. Goods that consumers want to buy during the holiday season could be missing from store shelves. Like I said, this would affect everyone. Walsh's statement, while unwelcome, was no surprise to Michael Baldwin, who's the president of the Signalman Union. Many businesses and groups were urging Congress to act before the September 16th strike deadline. And two Republican senators, Roger Wicker of Mississippi and Richard Burr of North Carolina, had introduced legislation that would have imposed a contract on the unions. Republicans were prepared to pass something then. They have that ability. See what I mean? So it's not just the Democrats. But at the time, Democrats refused to act to block a potential strike. Senator Richard Durbin, the second highest ranking Democrat in the Senate, told CNN at the time that I don't think it's likely we will intervene. He's okay. I've heard them say that about other countries as well. How many times have I heard like politicians say, oh, we're not likely to intervene with that country? He said that avoiding a strike depends on the parties in negotiations stepping up to the plate. The Association of the American Railroad said it is counting on Congress to act if new deals can't be reached. No one wants a strike to happen. And everything we've done throughout this process has been focused on getting a deal done and avoiding even the threat of one. Should we be unable to reach ratified agreements, however, Congress has historically stepped in to avert a service interruption. 3 unions have yet to finish their own ratification votes, including 2 largest, which represent the engineers and conductors who make the 2-person crews on each train. And that article goes on even further there. But I do want to show you this picture here. You may see these trains sometimes like when you're driving and you just see these trains that pass by and it's just nothing but freight. These are the trains we're referring to. This is the railroad, or these are the railroad workers I'm referring to, not the people who are working for Amtrak. It is very important that this moves. But will the strike happen? I don't know. We'll have to wait to see, but I sincerely hope that Congress will not create a contract for them. Because that contract, who knows, it could be half of what they're asking for. Half of it. I'm going to go to some of the comments here in the chat. Delthea says you can be pro-union and still not be pro-labor. Not every union is for structural change. That's a good point, Delthea. Brandy, we have a state rep candidate that his last name is Dees. Every time my 15-year-old sees the campaign sign, he makes that joke. Thank you for the super chat, Kim. Thank you for standing up for labor. Always, Kim, always. And JB says, want to bring the country to heel, cancel Christmas via a strike. Ooh, that's another one. That's another one. I've been saying for years, I think people should boycott Black Friday. But when I say this, people just look at me like, but that's when everything's on sale. I love Black Friday. And I've always kind of been like, are you really getting the best deal on Black Friday? According to the data, you're not. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Incumbent Mayor Byron Brown, who lost primary against India Walton, had Governor Hochul backing her. Looks like she is about to take an L tomorrow. Oof, oof. I'll cover a little bit of it tomorrow night, so we can get into some of that. And thank you for this tip as well. What about forcing the owner to give into their demands instead of workers accepting whatever they are offered? Here's a law that can make that happen. Give presidents the authority through executive order to nationalize entire industries or companies where the public have not only been so dependent upon, but have also shown a record of abusing the public trust, workers, consumers, and now must be taken over and ran by the government to ensure the public benefits. Section 2 can also not only allow presidents to take it over, but also have the president to give the money to its workers to help them restructure into a worker co-op. This law would only pertain to giving presidential unilateral authority to convert companies to government agencies, not the other way around. And thank you for this tip as well. Tell me about it, Delthea. It is the unions that are in the way of us getting the New York Healthcare Act, since leadership owns stock and insurance for healthcare and makes bank for selling to members. Ay. Ouch. Okay, we're going to go into our second story, and this one might make you laugh a little bit. I kid you not. I'm not exaggerating about this. This is dead serious. This is for real. So hold on to your seats, folk. Get ready. You're not going to believe this. So recently it was announced that TYT will be having a special guest tomorrow night to discuss the midterm elections. Let's take a look at who that special guest is going to be. Hold on to your seats. Don't you throw that popcorn. So Gene Gilger tweeted this out, and I honestly had to look this up to make sure this was actually real. Matt Gaetz talking to me, Anna, and Nina Turner on election night ought to be interesting. Now he goes on to say, this is the Young Turk site, so I did check all of this. Representative Matt Gaetz will join Gene Gilger, Anna Kasparian, and Nina Turner during our midterm election live coverage. Tune in starting 8 p.m. ET. What questions do you have for him? I have two clips that I want to show you, because when I first saw this, I was like, this has to be a parody, right? Tell me their account was hacked, but it's not. It's actually real. This is actually happening. And I said to myself, out of all the Republican candidates that they could bring on, they picked Matt Gaetz. I don't know if this is for clicks. I don't know if they're trying to create controversy. I don't know. But I do want to show you two clips from TYT, and there's multiple clips that they have about Matt Gaetz. But there are two in particular that I want to go over with you to show you why this is a problem, a huge problem. Let's go ahead and get into the first clip. Now, this clip here, this clip is from 2 years ago. So I'm going to show you an older clip and a clip that was just from about 1 month ago. Okay? Their opinion on Matt Gaetz has not changed. Here's a clip from TYT about Matt Gaetz saying white privilege is racist. Again, this is the person that they're bringing onto their show. And I'm not talking about this because they're bringing on a Republican. I'm talking about it because they're bringing on a Republican, and this is going to show how they're hypocrites. Let's go into it.
Matt Gaetz has some thoughts about what is and is not racist. And in this next video, he shares with the world something that he has felt strongly about, where the true racism in this country lies. Let's hear what he has to say.
President Coolidge also said that as Americans, we are the peers of kings. And I don't think it's a bad thing if we start acting like it. Some might call that male privilege or white privilege. You know what? Those terms are just racist terms to try to tell people to shut up, and we're done being quiet.
So Matt Gaetz said that the term like white privilege is racist. Now, it's okay for them to bring this guy on, right? But it wasn't okay for, and let's then follow me here. It's okay for Cenk Uygur to go onto TYT and to go onto Twitter and call everybody else who disagrees with them right-wingers. It's okay for Cenk Uygur, and it's mainly him who does this, to call Jimmy Dore right-winger. But is Jimmy Dore bringing Matt Gaetz on his show? You see the problem? So there's a lot of hypocrisy here. A lot of hypocrisy. Why is it okay for TYT to talk to people on the right, but it's not okay for other people to talk to people on the right? Explain this to me. So when I was telling you, like, when we did our general strike summit last year, and some people complained and yelled at us and said we didn't go through the proper channels, what they really meant was we didn't follow the lead of TYT. And that's where a lot of this comes from. This right here lets me know this is more about personality conflicts than it is about people they think may be right wing. That's what this is about. You have to remember that Cenk Uygur was a Republican. So it's just funny to me that he could point finger and call other people right wing when he actually was right wing. Let's go on.
I reject the notion of white privilege or black privilege or any other type of privilege. We are all unified in one American privilege that we should be proud of and fight for with everything we have.
John, as a white male, I would just like to apologize that you've, had such a difficult time in this country with the racism and the hatred directed toward you. You're a real victim here.
It's been a tough time, but I've tried to push through as best I can. I have always felt that male privilege is a racist term. That makes sense. I'm a serious thinker. You racist. You don't like me because I'm a guy, you racist. That is the level of just mostly solidified privilege that he is. They just filled a sack with privilege. And that's why he can, he can go and DUI and all that stuff, and he gets a pass. They don't care. He stands up there and he accuses others of being racist, even though 9 times out of 10 they say the accusations of racist are just a diversion, but now they like it, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And by the way, in your experience, you've probably heard many people say, "We're done being quiet." Have you ever heard someone say that who has a reputation for being quiet or for not talking all the time, constantly?
It's so funny. Yes, you're absolutely right about that. Especially someone like Matt Gaetz. He's never been quiet in his life. Matt Gaetz used a human as a prop recently on the House floor.
Yeah.
Okay, his former girlfriend's brother, who he alleges he adopted, he used that person who's from Cuba as a prop to argue that he was airing his grievances as the father of a minority. That's what he was trying to do on the House floor. He is a clown. He's
a clown, but you want to bring this clown on.
Absolute clown. And it's so embarrassing to know that he is a representative in this country and that there are living, breathing human beings who watch a speech like that and they feel proud. Yeah. It's just devastating and embarrassing.
Well, yeah, okay, so some of his jokes haven't necessarily landed, but that doesn't mean that some weren't good. You remember on March 7th, I think it was, or actually March 4th, when they were putting together a coronavirus relief bill, and he used a different prop when he put on a gas mask because the idea that this was gonna be a deadly pandemic was a joke to him. And then 120,000 plus people died. That one was dark, admittedly, but I like dark humor. He's a funny guy, Matt Gaetz. He's a funny.
Okay, so that's just part of one clip there. And before I can see the other clip, I do want to show you, because Savage Joy actually tweeted about this as well. Now, Savage Joy actually has met Nina Turner. She's interviewed Nina Turner. And Savage Joy is calling this out as well. She said, hold up, Nina Turner. I want to clarify. You are doing a show with the racist accused sex trafficker? Now that's coming from Savage Joy. She directed that towards Nina Turner because, like I said, she actually has met her. So yeah, it's the responses, I'm letting you know right now, have not been favorable. And I think it's important that Savage Joy pointed that out. And I want to explain to you why, and then we'll get to this next clip here. It's interesting to me because it was just like a month or two ago when Nina Turner went on this Twitter battle against her and like Jimmy Dore, and Nina Turner said that Jimmy Dore was anti-black, even though she didn't have any receipts for that. She was just stating that. But she willing to talk to Matt Gaetz though. You see what I'm saying? You see the problem? Wasn't it just like a couple of weeks ago when Breonna Joy Gray had a discussion, what was supposed to be discussion, ended up turning into more of a debate with Cenk Uygur about Cenk Uygur calling her a fake leftist. And Cenk Uygur went on to tell her, well, I don't like Aaron Monte and I don't like Max Blumenthal and Jimmy Dore and all these people. And so Bree's response was, you should invite them on and have a conversation with them. And you know what Cenk Uygur said? I don't want to talk to them. They spread lies. But you can talk to Matt Gaetz though. Even now, Cenk is on Twitter saying, oh, so people have a problem with the fact that we want to talk to people we disagree with. Nah, bruh, people have a problem with the fact that you want to talk to people who are on the right that you disagree with. And at the same time, you want to shun people on the left that you disagree with. And you want to call leftists right wing. That's the problem that we have. Let's get into this video here. Now, this clip was only a month ago, just a month ago. Listen to what Nina Turner says about Matt Gaetz.
It is what you can prove. I mean, that's what a court of law is all about. I want to go even before we even got to an investigation stage, which is, why would this man take a 17-year-old anywhere? Can we just start at the genesis? He should not be, taking a 17-year-old anywhere. That is the man, wouldn't even be caught up in this mess had he not taken the 17-year-old somewhere without, her parents or chaperone. Doesn't make sense. So that doesn't add up to me.
but this is the person that you want to talk to. So the topic of this video was Matt Gaetz likely to go scot-free in sex trafficking probe. Basically, they could not prove it per se. So he was likely they found out a month ago, he was likely to be let go scot-free. Nina Turner just explained to you, regardless of the fact, he should have never been taking a 17-year-old girl anywhere. Okay. How in the hell did Jink and Anna get Nina Turner to do this with them and Matt Gaetz? How in the hell? Who is making the decisions over at TYT? Because they've really kind of fallen off. They've been on some weird shit like the past couple weeks. Who's making these decisions? Is it Jink? Is it Katzenberg? Somebody is making decisions over there, and TYT is moving further and further to the right. Now, I have my prediction about why that's happening, but let me finish this first.
For me, that is the main problem. Wouldn't even be here but for that.
Yeah, 100%. And we won't get more details, it's looking like, on any of the early information that came out on this. And so we will never know for sure exactly why he sent messages to Greenberg saying hit up blank, the girl, and then sent money to Greenberg. And then the next day, Greenberg sent that same amount of money in 3 payments that said tuition, school, and school. Maybe it was for a totally reasonable, innocent purpose. It just looks incredibly suspicious and damning and pervy, but maybe it's nothing. We'll never know because they're not gonna charge him. Again, like I understand what Cenk is saying about, it's going to be less of a topic of conversation. I'm sure that it will be, but it still looks terrible. It still looks, and honestly, like, amongst all of the things that Matt Gaetz has done, I understand that some people might want to or might prefer to focus on other things. The fact that he will potentially in the next couple of years be a willing participant in the destruction of democracy in America. He would totally back another coup. There's a lot of other stuff that's more immediately threatening to America, perhaps. But this stuff also, I mean, there's stuff that looks suspicious. That's all I'm saying. And for some time we've been saying, it's been 2 years now. I don't know when any of you sort of mentally checked out from thinking that this might go somewhere. I mean, they were waiting so long. So I'm not shocked by this. I'm not generally shocked in America where someone with political power is able to do effectively whatever they want. But it is also different than he was proven to be innocent. And that might be my final comment on the matter, but I want to make sure that it gets out there.
Yeah, well, let me go to Killer here, who's watching on Twitch. They wrote in, the bottom line is proof came out that he was looking for a pardon. When you're looking for a pardon, that means you're guilty of a crime. And that is a really good point. I mean, I forgot about that he asked for a pardon from Trump. So at least he thinks he's guilty. Okay.
But y'all fine with bringing him on. You see, there's something else I want to show you, because it's not just this incident in particular. There's more. I'm telling you, and then I'm going to explain to you why I believe that this is happening. Okay. Cenk Uygur also tweeted this out. I have to check this if this is real. On Monday's episode of TYT Conversation, I will interview Larry Elder. Everybody hurry up and make assumptions. And don't forget to yell at me about talking to people we don't agree with. Larry Elder is the African-American candidate that ran against Gavin Newsom during the recall, who also said that slave owners deserve reparations. I kid you not. I kid you not. So my assumption is that they're doing this for clicks. They're doing this to get attention. Because TYT, the channel, has become garbage. Like, let's just be real. But I will say this. They don't really get the chance anymore to call anybody else on the left right-wingers. They really don't. I don't see, and I say Jimmy Dore a lot because that's usually who they point to. I don't see Jimmy Dore bringing on Larry Elder. I don't see Jimmy Dore bringing on Matt Gaetz. And some people forget this, but I do not. But Cenk Uygur also interviewed David Duke. That's right. Racist Klan David Duke. But he had problems with Jimmy Dore interviewing a Boogaloo boy. People forget that. I didn't forget. Certain people can get away with it. And let me tell you why I think that they're doing this. I think they're doing this, and this is based on other clips that I've seen recently as well. We talked about the whole interview with Anna Kasparian and Professor Wolf. Look, the jig is up. They know that this Bernie Sanders progressive movement is dead. They know it's done. So what they got to do? Now it's like, in order to keep the viewership or even increase the viewership, now you got to move even further to the right. So now maybe you can get some of the same, some of the same conservative viewers that maybe Breaking Points might have. Or maybe some of the same conservative viewers that Tucker Carlson may have. Why else would you bring on Matt Gaetz and Larry Elder out of all the Republicans you can bring onto your platform? That's right, Bling Girl. All political theater. Right. So in order to keep the grift, and I call it a fucking grift, in order to keep the grift, they now got to move further to the right. And we've been seeing people do this. It's like, okay, well, this Justice Democrats movement thing is kind of a bust. We can only keep defending them for so long. People are starting to check out. What do we do? Oh, I got it. We move further to the right. Just like when Cenk Uygur told you he was going to be voting for Rick Caruso instead of Karen, right? Why is that? Rick Caruso is actually a Republican. He moved to the Democratic Party so he has a better chance of winning the mayor race in LA. People gave him shit for it on Twitter, right? They gave him a lot of shit for it. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why would you support the billionaire? Maybe it's because Jeffrey Katzenberg, the guy who gave TYT that $20 million, also supports Rick Caruso. This is what it all comes down to. It's all about the money. So they got to keep following the grift. And for people who kind of depend on this is like, their income, their career, whatever, TYT, they got millions of subscribers, but a lot of that was built off a progressive base, right? So if the progressive movement is dead, where do you go? Think about it. Something to think about. It's embarrassing. I think it's a disgrace. And I don't think they have the room to call anyone else right wing anymore. And what's really disappointing is they actually got Nina Turner to go along with this shit. They actually got her to go along with it. It's like all their anti-homeless people rhetoric that you've heard on that show. Their fear-mongering about crime, saying we need more police. That's not a leftist position. But if you're Nina Turner and your family's cops, you might be okay with that. But as a Black woman, how can you be okay with Larry Elder and Matt Gaetz? What? Terrible. Absolutely terrible. You see how people just cave. And this is going into our next story about Bernie Sanders. This is all connected because I wanted to make a point tonight. We need to make sure that we don't fall for something like this ever again. We need to make sure Bernie Sanders, because it may not actually be Bernie Sanders, the next progressive type movement that they try to throw in our face and push our way through the Democratic Party, we need to make sure we do not fall for this again. And I'm going to go into the message here about Bernie Sanders. And the reason why we're going to go here is because the midterm elections are tomorrow. Bernie Sanders was just recently in Philadelphia doing a rally to encourage people to come out to vote. And I listened to some of his speech and I was like, oh, this sounds a little familiar. And it started to make me concerned because it started to make me feel like people actually could have hope for Bernie again. And you should not. And we're going to do a little case study here of Bernie Sanders' playbook. So we're going to go back and we're going to go forward. And I'm going to show you what you need to pay close attention to so that we do not fall for something like this again. And we're going to get started with this debate here, this one-on-one with Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. There are two things I want to point out here in this debate that I actually caught when this debate happened. And I'm surprised more people didn't call this out. Let's get started with the debate.
Make the case for why a revolution is not what the country needs or wants.
We have problems we have to solve now. Now, what's a revolution going to do? Disrupt everything in the meantime?
That part right there. What's a revolution going to do? Joe Biden says disrupt everything in the meantime. That was Joe Biden letting you know they don't want a disruption. And that's what a revolution does. It is supposed to disrupt. They don't want that. You see what I mean? I want you to pay close attention to what Joe Biden says here when he goes into Medicare for all, and where I think Bernie Sanders really failed here in his response to Joe Biden. But I don't think that was an accident. I think that was on purpose. Let's get to that.
Look, the senator talks about his Medicare for all. He still hasn't told you how he's going to ever get it passed. He hasn't told you how, in fact, there's any possibility of that happening. He hadn't told you how much it's going to cost. He hadn't tell you how it's going to apply. It doesn't kick in for 4 years, even after it passes. We want a revolution. Let's act now. Pass the Biden health care plan, which takes Obamacare, restores all the cuts made to it, subsidizes further, provides for lower drug prices, make sure that there's no hidden bills, make sure that we invest, I want to invest $50 billion in dealing with underlying diseases that are of great consequence, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and cancer. Make sure that we have a Medicare option that's in a public option providing Medicare for us. We can do that now. I can get that passed.
By the way, if you pay close attention here, I haven't seen Joe Biden this sharp since he's been in office. The cognitive decline is real. Now, he says if you want a revolution, you should vote for the Biden health plan. How is that a revolution when it doesn't even cover everybody? Does Bernie Sanders push back on that?
I can get that done if I'm president of the United States of America. That will be a fundamental change, and it happens now. I can tell you from experience, being a significant consumer of health care with my sons, my family, all the things we've gone through. What people want is hope, and they need it now, not 4 years from now. And Bernie still hasn't told us how he's going to pay for it. We're talking about a $30+ trillion plan.
Not quite true.
Senator Sanders.
Right, look, let's do something that is very rarely done in the Congress. Let's do something that the media doesn't do. Let's talk about the reality of American life. Why is it that over the last 45 years, despite the huge increase in productivity and technology, the average worker today is not making a nickel more in real dollars? Why is it that over the last 30 years, the richest 1% have seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth, bottom half of America, $900 billion decline in their wealth? Why is it that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Why are we the only major country not to have paid medical and family leave? Why do we give tax breaks to billionaires when 500,000 people are homeless today? And it comes down to something, Jake, we don't talk about. The power structure in America. Who has the power? And I'll tell you who has the power. It's the people who contribute money, the billionaires who contribute money to political campaigns, who control the legislative agenda. Those people have the power. And
now he's pointing out the billionaires who donate to political campaigns, but watch what he leaves out, which I felt was very significant for someone to mention, and he doesn't mention it.
if you want to make real changes in this country, if you want to create an economy that works for all, not just a few, if you want to guarantee quality health care to all, not make $100 billion in profit for the healthcare industry, you know what you need? You need to take on Wall Street. You need to take on the drug companies and the insurance companies and the fossil fuel industry. You don't take campaign contributions from them. You take them on and create an economy that works for all.
You want to do
what Bernie Sanders did here was he basically just repeated what he had been saying during the Democrat primary debates throughout that election season. That same speech, I heard it over and over and over again. What he did not do is he did not attack Joe Biden when it comes to the issue of healthcare and donors. Why didn't Bernie Sanders, during his pushback there, why didn't he push back on Joe Biden and say, well, excuse me, Joe, but you take money from Big Pharma? Why didn't he do that? Why didn't Bernie Sanders say, well, of course you're going to say it's too expensive or we don't know how to pay for it because you're also in the pocket of Big Pharma? Why didn't he do that? Tell me. Why? When Tulsi Gabbard attacked Kamala Harris, she attacked Kamala Harris directly on her record, right? If we are talking about Medicare for all, and we're talking about providing health care for everyone in this country, and Joe Biden is telling you that you never explained how you were going to pay for it. Obviously, we knew that was a lie. If you had been watching the Democratic primary debates, he mentioned that multiple times. If Joe Biden is telling you that you don't even know how to make it pass, why didn't Bernie Sanders say, well, this can be done by executive order? Why didn't he say that? But more importantly, he did not attack him directly. He pointed out the billionaires, which we all know about. He said that over and over again. He pointed out Big Pharma, campaign contributions, the same line that we've heard him say over and over and over again, but he did not attack him directly in reference to Joe Biden being in the pocket of Big Pharma. That's a problem. These are the kind of things we need to pay attention to. Why he go so easy on him here? Medicare for all was like Bernie Sanders' thing. Why he go easy on Joe with that? Joe Biden was his friend. You mean to tell me he didn't know that Joe Biden was taking money from Big Pharma? I knew that. This was on purpose. And I go back to this debate and I say, Bernie was not really trying to win here. He was stronger during the Democratic primary debates than he was during this debate. This debate was not his strongest debate. And I think that was on purpose. I wouldn't be surprised if he was told not to go too hard on Joe. Let's go back in.
that, do what I proposed over 30 years ago. Federally fund all elections. No private contributions in the election process. If you want to do that, join me. Join me in my constitutional amendment that I've been proposing. Maybe you and I can work on that together, because that would fundamentally change it. And the implication is I've not accepted a contribution from anybody over $2,800, number one. My average contribution is $44. Just this month, I've raised $33 million, average contribution $51. The idea that this is Bernie's implication is somehow I'm being funded by millionaires. Bernie, look, in the last Super Tuesday and before that, Bernie outspent me 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 1. And I still won. I didn't have any money. And I still won.
Senator Sanders?
We know damn well Joe Biden was taking corporate money, but okay.
It's good that you had an idea 30 years ago. I don't want to join you. Why don't you join me? Why don't you?
I don't want to join you. Why don't you join me? But he did join him. Do you see? He did join him. When Bernie Sanders told you to vote for Joe Biden before he even suspended his campaign and he started telling people to vote for Joe Biden, he had already decided to join him. Do you see this? I don't want to join you. Why don't you join me? But he did join him. So if you didn't want to join Joe Biden, Bernie, why did you join him?
Get rid of the super PAC. that you have right now, which is running very ugly negative ads about me, by the way. Don't laugh, Joe. That's just the truth. And they got 2 other super PACs running ads against us. Why don't you just say right now, go on television and say, hey, you know what? I think in the past, Joe, if I'm not mistaken, you condemned super PACs. Is that correct?
You get rid of the 9 super PACs you have?
I don't have 9 super. I don't have
You
any
have
super
9.
PACs.
You want me to list them?
No, yeah, you go ahead and list them.
Okay, come on. Give me a break.
No, I won't give you a break on this one, Joe. You condemned super PACs. You got a super PAC is running negative. But here's the point. This is the point. In the richest country in the history of the world, half of our people should not be struggling to put food on the table.
Same talking point. Same talking point.
And the reason for that is you have a political structure in which big money interests not only dominate the political system, but dominate our economy as well. Somebody makes a decision, we're going to shut down a factory in America, we're going to move to China, we're going to move to Mexico, pay people starvation wages there. This is an issue that has got to be ultimately dealt with. Who has the power in America? Are we content with so few exercising so much power when so many people have given up on the political process?
I proposed a significant change in the tax code, and I've been proposing it for a long, long time. Number 1. Number 2, it's not just about taxing the super wealthy. It's about making sure everybody pays their fair share. For example, I can pay for my whole healthcare plan by changing the way in which we deal with capital gains. People should pay their capital gains based on what their income tax is, and not at 20%. That would raise $800 billion, pay for my entire medical health care plan, which would cover everyone.
Who looks sharper in this debate to you, Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders? You see, at the time, I couldn't see it. At the time, I did not see it because I was so, like, yay, Bernie. I really wanted Bernie to win. And I realized when I went back and watched this, there were things that I missed and things that I overlooked. And I go back to this and I realized Bernie really was not as strong here as I thought he was when I saw it the first time live on TV. Joe Biden has not been this sharp since. He hasn't. Now, I'm not going to play the entire video here, but I do want to go ahead to the next clip because, again, we're continuing the case study of the Bernie Sanders playbook. Now, remember what we just listened to. He did not call out Joe Biden's funding when it comes to the pharma industry. He did not push back on Joe Biden in reference to, well, he did kind of push back on that, but so he didn't push back on him in reference to the big pharma funding. He didn't call him out specifically in reference to that. And another key takeaway here from this clip is that he told Joe Biden, I don't want to join you, you join me. But he joined him anyway. Why would you join someone you don't want to join? Now we're going to go back to his 2016 campaign when he told people to vote for Hillary. Now, this was Bernie Sanders in Philadelphia. And I want you to hear the audience reaction. This is just all a reminder. This is part of the playbook. How every time he ends up telling you to vote for the establishment corporate Democrat. Listen to this.
Immediately, right now, we have got to defeat Donald Trump. And we have got to elect Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine.
That was the first time he sold out his movement. You hear all the boos? That was the first. We're going to go to the second time where he sells out his movement again. Listen to this.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
Does that sound familiar? That's what he's saying right now. He said it in 2016. He said it in 2020. And he's saying it right now. This is all a part of his playbook. I'll let him finish.
In response to the unprecedented crises we face, we need an unprecedented response, a movement like never before of people who are prepared to stand up and fight for democracy and decency and against greed, oligarchy, and bigotry.
Stand up and fight against greed, oligarchy, and bigotry. Now listen what he tells you to do.
And we need Joe Biden as our next president. Let me take this opportunity to say a word to the millions of people who supported my campaign this year and in 2016.
So he tells you to stand up to greed, oligarchy, right? He tells you to stand up to it. But then in the end, he tells you to vote for the same problem he told you to stand up to and fight against. Because Joe Biden is still very much, he's in the pocket of that same greed and oligarchy, his donors, his corporate donors, he's in that same pocket. So how are you going to tell all these young people who came out and to support you, how are you going to tell all these people to stand up against greed? And then you tell them to vote for the corporate candidate who's a part of the same greed you told them to fight against. This is a key element here that is a part of Bernie Sanders' playbook. He did it with Hillary Clinton as well. He called her corrupt. He said it was a lot of greed, right? Fight back against the billionaires. Fight back against corporate money in politics. But then he told you to vote for Hillary Clinton, who was just very much corporate and greedy. Same thing in 2020. Same thing. This will not change. Regardless if there is a Trump-like Republican or not. This is something that is a part of Bernie Sanders' playbook that at the end of the day, he is going to tell you to vote for the same corporate greed that he told you to fight against. And I say this because they are not going to let Bernie Sanders win. The DNC was never going to let him win. And it's important that people understand this because the next person that come through, it may not be Bernie Sanders, but they may have the same message as Bernie Sanders. And they'll run through the Democratic Party and they'll say they're progressive. And this time, it may be a black man, maybe a black woman. It may be AOC. And they'll use the same talking points. And then people will think, well, maybe if Bernie couldn't get it done, maybe they'll get in there where Bernie couldn't. They won't on that message. They won't get in unless they sell out. You have to understand how the political system works. So they were never going to let Bernie Sanders in. They said so themselves. They can change the rules at any time. They did it during the Democratic primary debates. So at the end of the day, the people running through the Democratic Party as progressives, they are either going to do what Bernie telling you to do and vote for that corporate greed, or they're going to sell out themselves and become that corporate candidate in order to win. Now, here's the message that he delivered to his audience.
My friends, thank you for your trust, your support, and the love you showed Jane, me, and our family. Together, we have moved this country in a bold new direction, showing that all of us, black and white, Latino, Native American, Asian American, gay and straight, native born and immigrant, yearn for a nation based on the principles of justice, love, and compassion. Our campaign ended several months ago, but our movement continues and is getting stronger every day.
That part right there, he tells you that the movement continues. He did the same thing in 2016. Has the movement continued? No.
of the ideas we fought for, that just a few years ago were considered radical, are now mainstream. But let us be clear. If Donald Trump is reelected, all the progress we have made will be in jeopardy.
What progress? What progress was made, though? Yeah, you educated people about the issues. You brought some of those issues to the forefront. But some people could say, so did Jill Stein. So what exactly was the progress? Do we have Medicare for all? No, we don't. Did they cancel all of student loan debt? No, they did not. Do we have paid family leave? Do we have paid sick leave? What was the progress?
At its most basic, this election is about preserving our democracy. During this president's term, the unthinkable has become normal.
And I'm going to stop right there. So Bernie Sanders is telling you that it's about preserving our democracy. That was in 2020. Does that sound familiar? Isn't that the same script that Ro Khanna and Bernie and AOC and all the other Democrat politicians have been using this year? You see how they continue the same script, guys? It's not new. Preserve our democracy. They run it on the same shit. Same thing. Now I'm going to take you to another clip here, because like I said, this is a playbook. They don't even come up with new material. Like they just pull out the same playbook. It's like if you're on a football team, right? And the football team, they have a playbook, and the coach is like, look, we're going to pull out that same playbook from last year, and we're going to use these plays. We might add in a couple of new ones, but for the most part, this is the playbook. This is what they do. Nothing has really changed because they using the same script. Same one. Now, there was something else I noticed about Bernie Sanders' campaign, and I did raise concern about this at the time. And even after he lost, I said, I told you he should have done this. Bernie Sanders did not have a reparations plan. Even Nina Turner, who was a part of his campaign in 2020, told him that he should have a reparations plan, that would be a mistake. If you're trying to get the African-American voters, you should have some type of reparations plan. Bernie Sanders didn't. He didn't want that. And I want to remind you of something, because Lucy mentioned something earlier when she came on. When you have a politician like AOC, like Lucy told you, she look out for her people, right? Bernie Sanders did the same thing. And I'm going to play this clip here, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. Now, this clip, this is from African Diaspora News Channel. Now, he touches on something really key here. And like I said, it was a mistake for him to not have a reparations plan. Even Marianne Williamson had a reparations plan. What does that tell you when it comes to Bernie Sanders and the African-American community? Listen to this.
Now, our biggest issue with Bernie Sanders, more than the other two candidates, also Elizabeth Warren, she talked about she has some agreement with it, but she feels Native Americans need to be added. But we'll deal with Elizabeth Warren another time. Bernie Sanders has an emphatic no when it comes to reparations for African Americans. And he doesn't like to even talk about it. He gets a little bothered. But let's roll just some short clips of him and all his denials of reparations.
Your position specifically on reparations. I asked the question because Elizabeth Warren, Julian Castro, they've indicated they want.
What does that mean? What do they mean? I'm not sure that anyone's very clear. What I've just said is that I think we must do everything that we can to address the massive level of disparity that exists in.
So I want to jump in here, and I want to let you know, at the time I did not know that, but I found out later on that my suspicion was correct. Bernie Sanders said this on the Breakfast Club. He said this at the CNN town hall as well, that what do you mean when you say a reparations plan? Well, Bernie Sanders knew exactly what they were talking about when they asked about a reparations plan. And I know this because when I interviewed Cornel West about this, I asked him, why didn't Bernie Sanders have a reparations plan? And Cornel West broke it down for me. So he knew exactly what they were asking. Bernie Sanders just really didn't want to answer the question. And for me, looking back on it, like I said, this was a problem. Let's go back in
this country.
I'll tell you what they mean, because Elizabeth Warren has said black families have had a much steeper hill to climb. We need systematic structural changes to address that. Julian Castro has said, I have long thought that this country would be better off if we did find a way to do that, reparations.
Well, I agree with what Elizabeth said.
So you would support reparations?
But read what she said. What does that mean? She means, I think, I don't want to put words into her mouth, is what I said. Okay?
African Americans are starting to call for reparations for the many years of stolen labor through slavery. Is that something that you would support as president?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it would be, first of all, its likelihood of getting through a Congress is nil. Second of all, I think it would be, very divisive.
So he said, no, he would not support it because it wouldn't get through Congress. And he also said that it would be very divisive. But Bernie Sanders had no problem supporting reparations for other groups in the past. Let's go on. Let's go on, because we're calling it all out tonight. I'm going to show you about this.
Why not support reparations then?
What do you mean by reparations?
By reparations for slave defenders.
I know, but what does that mean exactly?
Money.
Well, I think that right now our job is to address the crises facing the American people and our communities. And I think there are better ways to do that than just writing out a check.
Just wanted to recap.
But which communities was he referring to? See, these are the kind of things you have to go back and you really have to take a second look at. When he said our communities, which communities was he referring to? Because I want to be clear here, because some people, may not know about this, but I'm going to break this down for you for a second. Now, I'm not a reparations expert, but I know enough about it to tell you what it really means. General Sherman made a promise to African Americans in this country. That promise was 40 acres and a mule. That promise was never fulfilled. And because of that, African Americans struggle to adapt some type of generational wealth. 40 acres, that's land. Land is wealth. So this is why a lot of us, and especially even today, this is why a lot of us that are African American, we have no generational wealth because that promise was not fulfilled. Now, there are reparations experts that can tell you exactly what that would be equivalent to today. I recommend that you look them up, Yvette Carnell, Dr. Sandy Darity. Look into their research because they actually can break it down for you. But there was something suspect about this because, like I told you, he had no problem supporting it before for another group, just not for Black people.
That. Now, Bernie Sanders isn't for reparations at all for African Americans, but guess who he's okay with having reparations? His own people. See, if you had an issue about reparations, then you would take that no matter what position that you're in, whether it's your own people or someone else. But he was okay with it for his own people. Now let's go ahead and go to the computer real quick. And I want to show you how he was for reparations for his own people. So ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing here the Holocaust Rail Justice Act. Now, this is the reparations that Bernie Sanders was for, because as we know that he says an emphatic no when it comes to African Americans and their hurt and pain, but he says yes to his people. Now, this is the bill that he was pushing for. Now, it says a bill to ensure that the courts of the United States may provide an impartial forum for claims brought by United States citizens and others against any railroad organized as a separate legal entity arising from the deportation of United States citizens and others to Nazi concentration camps on trains owned or operated by such railroad and by the heirs and survivors of such persons. Now,
and notice the sponsor is Chuck Schumer. So notice again, he just told you Bernie Sanders pushed for this. but he wasn't even willing to support reparations for African Americans. Keep that in the back of your head, because there's something else I'm going to point out too.
Now, Charles Chuck Schumer, he sponsored that bill, okay? Now, you may say, well, what Bernie Sanders has to do with this one? If we go to details here, co-sponsors, as you will see here, Bernard Bernie Sanders. So he co-sponsored this bill, okay? And this is the bill that he wanted, and he wanted reparations for his people. We're going to prove that. So it just say in the summary of this is introduce a Holocaust Rail Justice Act grants U.S. District Courts original jurisdiction over any civil action for damages for personal injury or death that arose from deportation of persons to Nazi concentration camps between January 1, 1942 and December 31, 1944, and is bought by or on behalf of such person against a railroad that owned or operated the trains on which the persons were deported, and that was organized as a separate legal entity. Declares that no law limiting the jurisdiction of U.S. courts shall preclude any such action, and no such action shall be barred because a statute of limitations has expired. It makes this act applicable to any action pending on or commenced after January 1, 2002. And that says direct Secretary of State to report to Congress on the status of access to wartime records and archives concerning the wartime activities of any such railroad that engaged in the deportation of such persons to Nazi concentration camps.
Now, how can you be for it for your people, but against it for African Americans? And this isn't the only thing. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, she tried to chime in here too. And like Elizabeth Warren, she wanted to come in and say, oh, well, we need to add, indigenous people to this too. By the way, we had a panel on RBN about this very same discussion with those who are indigenous. And I've heard this from multiple different indigenous people. They are not asking for reparations. But people want to add all these other different groups. This is important for people to understand. So this video, you can watch the entire video. It's called Bernie Sanders Supports Reparations, but for his people, not for Black people. And this isn't the only issue that I had a problem with Bernie Sanders that I really need to point out as well when it comes to African Americans. Bernie Sanders was against defunding the police. So you got two strikes, bud. You were against reparations. You were against defunding the police. Two issues attached to the Black community. But see, Bernie Sanders, when I did a deep dive, I realized Bernie Sanders, he wanted us to support the issues that help white communities, but he didn't want to support issues that helped Black communities. And so when people come on and they say, oh, well, Medicare for all is for everybody, or Medicare for all would greatly help the Black community. Bro, that's for everyone. When we're talking about issues that directly affect the Black community, Bernie Sanders was against it. And so I had to say something to myself there. And I had to ask myself a question. Because what I noticed, and he's doing this right now with this rally here in Philadelphia, he doing the same playbook. Bernie Sanders has a lot of African-American speakers, just like he had African-American people a part of his 2020 campaign. Bernie Sanders go do a rally with Public Enemy, show I'm down with the people, Black people come out and vote for me. And at the same time, he was against the issues for your very community. And he's doing it again. If we go to this rally here in Philadelphia, I'm going to show you how they play us. Now, I'm going to get back to the speech in a minute. Let me put it on mute. We're going to go through this. We're not playing the whole thing. I just want to show you he doing the same thing again. So look at the speakers. So here we go. We got city councilor members. There's a Black woman. There's an Asian woman, right? Let's go on. I'm going to show you all of them. Look, here we go. Here's the speakers again. So you have Lloyd Salison, Dean. I still believe he is also person of color. I think so. So is she, right? Again, there's nothing wrong with diversity, but I want you to pay attention to what they're actually doing. Then we go on. I'm going to show you all these bad boys in Philly. Here we go again. Campaign director for Move On Rapid Response. Person of color, right? Let's keep going. Here's another one. Antonio, person of color, right? We're going to get through all of them until you get to Bernie Sanders, right? Maurice, African-American. Let's go on. There's another one. Person of color. This is how they play you, man. Look, this is the virtue signal. Here we go now. Here we go again. Christina, person of color. And you see all of this. Then you get to the performance, and what do you know? The female artist, African American, right? Okay. So then we get to Bernie Sanders, and she performs for a while. Then we get to Bernie Sanders, his speech here. And he gonna say the same familiar shit that he was saying before. Now listen to this.
I want to tell you that which party controls the U.S. House, U.S. Senate, who your governor is of enormous consequence to every person in this room, every person in Pennsylvania. And let me tell you what is at stake in this campaign. A number of months ago, as I know all of you are aware of, the Supreme Court of the United States, a very right-wing extremist Supreme Court, came up with an abominable decision. And they said that women in America are too dumb to be able to control their own bodies. We disagree.
The same style of rhetoric leaves out the fact that the Democratic Party actually let it get to this point because they did not codify Roe v. Wade into law. They didn't even abolish the filibuster under Obama when they had the votes and the seats to do so.
And we're going to tell the Supreme Court and everybody else that that very personal decision is a decision of women, not of government. And by the way, I am quite confident that most of you know how babies are made. Men, this is your issue as well. Stand with the women.
So again, right off the bat, the first thing he discusses is abortion. And this is what the Democrats have been doing all year. The first thing you should be discussing is the economy and inflation. That is the number one issue on the polls for American voters. Abortion is not the number one issue, but they still doing the same thing.
This campaign is about whether your generation will be able to raise your kids and have grandchildren who will live in a state, a country, a planet that is healthy and is habitable. The last 8 years have been the hottest years ever recorded. It ain't going to get better unless we make it better. So if you don't want to grow up in a world with drought and floods, extreme weather disturbances, increased disease, poor people all over the world being forced to leave their homes because they don't have any clean water or they can't grow their crops, if you believe we have got to save the planet for future generations, let us have the courage to take on the greed of the fossil fuel industry and transform our energy system.
Sound familiar? Yes, it does sound familiar. He is in Philadelphia. Okay, so the candidates in Pennsylvania, it's John Fetterman and it's Dr. Oz. There's also Richard Weiss. He's running as Green Party candidate. He's there to get people to come out and vote for John Fetterman so they can keep or flip one of these seats in the Senate. Now, he just gave you a whole speech about climate catastrophe. Excuse me. He just gave you a whole speech about the climate catastrophe. And I just want to remind you that John Fetterman is pro-fracking. So how is bringing in, you see how neither one of them are a good option. How is bringing in John Fetterman going to prevent that crisis? How is that half-assed climate bill that was passed this year going to prevent climate crises or even put a dent in climate crisis? It does not. If you actually talk to climate scientists, they will explain to you that is nowhere near enough to even put a dent into it. But here's Bernie Sanders leading you to believe that that weak climate bill legislation that they just passed, and by you voting for John Fetterman, who's pro-fracking, he's here to convince you and make you believe that this is actually going to help the climate crisis in this country. And it is not. You're still going to have the droughts. You're still going to have other weather catastrophes. If you still have the military industrial complex in operation, this is not going to fix the issue. And Bernie Sanders knows that, but he's not going to tell you that.
And this campaign, it's not only about women's rights, it's not only about saving the planet, as important as all of that is. And this is something, to be very honest with you, I never imagined in my life that I would be saying as a United States Senator. And that is, this election is about saving the foundations of American democracy.
Sound familiar? Same thing he said in the clip I played for you in 2020. Same thing. He's been using the same playbook. Nothing has changed. I don't know if he's thinking about trying to run again or not, but I'm just telling you, there's some red flags that people need to really pay close attention to. Like, I look back on it and I really feel like a fool. I really do. Like, the fact that I even believed that Bernie Sanders was actually going to fight for us. He went right along with Joe Biden, right along. So that is the case there for Bernie Sanders. And there was something that I mentioned on Twitter the other day. When we go back to those issues of defunding the police and reparations, Bernie Sanders marched with Dr. King. Bernie Sanders was arrested because he was protesting segregated housing. There's pictures of that, right? Famous pictures. So Bernie Sanders knows about the inequalities that African Americans have in this country. He was a part of the civil rights movement. Bernie Sanders marched with Dr. King, and he sat there and he watched police officers beat people, sick dogs on Black people. And Bernie Sanders doesn't think we need to defund the police? That don't seem strange to you? You were a part of the movement where they were still seriously beating Black people, trying to kick Black people out on the street. And you were there and you watched this stuff happen, and you don't think they need to defund the police? The point that I'm trying to make to you is this. And especially if you're African American, please pay attention to this, because I never want to fall for this shit again. Every now and then, there may be a person that they put forward or that chooses to run, and they may have good intentions in the beginning. And then they get into the two-party system and they realize that they're going to have to go along with partisan politics if they actually want a chance. No matter how much grassroots money Bernie Sanders raised, the DNC was able to just change the rules if they wanted to, if need be. Obama could make a phone call and tell people to drop out of the race. Obama called Bernie Sanders and told him to take a step back and give it to Joe. And Bernie Sanders talked about a political revolution, and just like that, he backed out. Twice in a row. What I'm trying to warn you of is this. The next Bernie Sanders won't be Bernie Sanders. The next Bernie Sanders will be a Black man or a Black woman or Latina like AOC. And they're going to use more identity politics to really hope get the Black vote to come out. Because the Black vote has not been as strong as it has since Barack Obama since. He still got the largest amount of the Black vote till this day. So they see, okay, it don't really work with Bernie Sanders. You know, some African Americans weren't really feeling him. Again, like I just told you, they weren't really feeling Bernie, not feeling the reparations thing. That was part of the problem. So what they'll do is they'll dress up someone else who looks like us and run on the same policies and the same issues as Bernie Sanders. But they'll be corporate. And they may make you think that they're grassroots. But they will be corporate, they will be in the pocket of the DNC, and they will win. And when they win, they will turn on us just like all the others. And we would have once again given our vote to a candidate that we thought was going to really fight for the African American community and decided to cave. These are puppets. Some of them are pawns. And we cannot continue to fall for this game again. And if you do not believe me, mark my words, someone else will rise up and will be that person and will have that same appearance. And people will fall for it all over again. Watch. Now I want to play this audio here. And I played this on RBN, but I want to play it on this channel as well. Now this is from Phil Scott. Roger Meadows sent me this. And it's just a snippet that I want to play. Now, he asked his dad, did the Democratic Party ever do anything for African Americans? I want you to listen to this bit here.
Have they done anything for Black people? In all the years that you have seen Black people voting, have they done anything for Black people? Could you just name one thing that you could tell me concrete, like, yes, the Democrat Party has done this, and that. And this is why we vote for them so much. My father told me that the Democrat Party has done nothing for Black people. He said that they come around every 2 years, knocking on your door, leaving flyers and all of that, going to your church, asking us to vote for them. And he said, after you vote for them, they disappear. You never see them again until 2 years later. Then here they coming back, saying the same thing. He said, you never see them in the community. You don't know really anything they're doing. And that's a perpetual cycle that's been happening for a long time. So I asked him, I said, well, why haven't nobody called this out? Why haven't nobody say, hey, what are y'all doing for us? He said, a lot of Black people just think that's the thing to do.
Very important that you listen to that segment. Eric, can you put the link to that in the chart? It's called My Father Said Everything Fell Apart in the Early 1970s and Democrats Don't Care About Black Americans. And I hate to tell some of you this, but that includes Bernie Sanders too. He was only willing to go so far. And just because he had Black people that were part of his campaign, that didn't mean shit to me no more, because when it came down to the actual issues, he was not willing to go that far. Eric, I think I am going to take just a quick break before we go into the call in, if you don't mind. I think there might be a couple more comments to get into. But like I said, don't fall for it again, guys. We're going to talk about this on call in tonight, because like I told you, next time it won't be Bernie Sanders. It'll be someone else, and they'll trick you again. All right, Eric, I'm ready whenever you are.
I think you got to adjust the call-in time. All right, but I'm sure she'll do that. Excuse me. All right. How's everybody doing on this new week? Let's see. There we go. Oh, Eric, did you hear about the government doing gain of function in Boston? I heard there was a story about something happening at BU, but I haven't heard the details. Hang on. Yeah, hopefully that clears me out a little bit. So, yeah, so I'm not sure. All right, let's see what we got for some comments. We got some comments here, and we got some from Roger on the Rockfins. Back to here's Roger on the YouTubes. Oh yeah, I gotta put up the Colin starting soon banner. So this is where Sabby takes a little break, and then when she comes back, we jump into the Colin segment, which you can get to either by hitting the pinned link, or you can install the Colin app on your phone. Roger said was with McGowan till she endorsed Elder, not a third party. So I think he means Larry, referring to Larry Elder. Thanks for that chat, Roger. From Delthea, yeah, noting every election can't be the most important election ever by definition. I guess everyone can. I guess they can claim that it's more important than everyone before it, which is what they expect us to believe. From Roger, thank you for this super chat on the tubes. My man Phil Scott, keeping it real as always. Yeah, that was from the audio that Sabby played from Philip Scott. And that was yeah, that was a thing. And asking what have the Dems done for black folk? It's a good question. We got from Desert Mantis, noting that they paid reparations to the slaveholders from the North back in the 1860s. They got paid for the slaves they lost. Yeah, I remember hearing that, and that yeah, they didn't mind paying money to those folks, of course. And also from Delthea, she notes, as I told people when Bernie was running, black people liked most of his plans, but they couldn't like his not liking our justice claims. Yeah, definitely. And from our man JB Font, saying, Sabby, if John Lewis can sell out, so can Bernie. Yep, from Mr. JB. And we had this also from Roger, abolish all political parties at every level of government. And speaking of Mr. Roger Meadows, let's see what he's got for us over here on the Rockfins. And we'll put that up here. Move little things around here so I can scroll it. All right. Thanks for this tipped comment on the Rockfins, Mr. Roger Meadows. Did he even pass the Biden healthcare plan? I wish to God Grumbine and Kaboob message would have come before this campaign to let us know that Congress and the Treasury Secretary have the power to mint coins and legislate money into existence. Sorry, just moving something around here. All right. This was the ultimate nullifier we could have used against these talking points of how will you pay for it. Same applies to David Dayan article regarding EO4 Medicare for All being late. Thanks for that one, Roger. And this one, Ta-Nehisi Coates was the first one to bust Bernie on this, then found it puzzling. How could you have the will to be willing to have all this spending for all these other programs, but all of a sudden he becomes conservative on what we need? Again, Sabrina Grumbine Kaboo, where were you in 2015, 2020? We could have used your arguments. After that, said me trying to sell Bernie to black folks was an uphill battle. And also this from Mr. Roger. When you say that he was for universal policies that would help white communities where we just get the inheritance of it, Sab, but I would go further. It's not that he was for issues that help whites, but actually a lot of black people felt that he supported all the other marginalized communities except ours. Immigration, LGBTQ, women's groups, abortion rights, etc. But us, well, nope. Thanks for those comments on the old Rockfins, Roger. Do a little shifting around here, and Sabby's going to be back with us shortly, and then we'll get into the old into the old call-in. Yeah, so that was interesting on that debate to hear Biden talking about a constitutional amendment to address money in politics and campaigns, and obviously he hasn't said a peep about that, ever since, and so obviously was not serious, and I don't know. I think at the end of the day, you just basically have to say Bernie is corrupt like Biden is, and Bernie might have been the lesser of two evils if he got elected, and that's about the best you could say about him.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
See you in Colin. Bye.
Okay. We are going to head over to call in here. What is that, AJF? Thank you for the super chat. Bernie ultimately valued his friendship with Biden over popular people's agenda. Yeah, I mean, you could say that for 2020, but he didn't have a friendship with Hillary Clinton and he still sold out. Just at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders' job was to just keep you in the Democratic Party. And it's very sad and it's unfortunate, but this is his playbook, and now we know his game. Just be on the lookout, because next time around, it may not be a Bernie Sanders. It may be someone else. So for call-in, that is what we are discussing. The Bernie strategy issue. This is episode, I said 23. Why does that say 23? I got to edit that. Anywho, it's episode 53. Bernie Sanders rally in Philly looks very familiar. Let's discuss the problems with the repetitive strategy from Bernie Sanders that leads us back into the Democratic Party. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. The link is now pinned to the top of the chat. I didn't get a chance to, did I look at the poll? I don't know if the poll's still there or not. I can't even see the poll. I don't know what happened. But when I did look at the poll beforehand, the majority of you said that, that the railroad workers should go on strike. And I think it was maybe 11% said you weren't sure. But no one had said no when I looked at it. So, but that's cool. We're going to head on over to call in, guys. Thanks so much for hanging in tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night. We'll do a little bit coverage of the midterm elections, and I have 2 stories I want to get into tomorrow as well. So I'll see you then, and we will go ahead and head on over to call in. So you know how we do this, guys. Have a good night. Oh, and we reached over 24 subs, over 24K subs, guys. Thank you so much for your support. We're doing good on call in too. We are over 1,000 subs on call-in as well. So we're doing the damn thing. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.